Hello, Internet. Welcome back to Jams by Jish. I'm Jish, and today we are going to be talking about the soundtrack for the hit TV show Bluey. If you enjoy this video, then make sure you give it a like and comment what your favorite song from Bluey is. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. First, a little background information. Bluey is a cartoon that started in 2018, revolving around Bluey, a blue healer, and her family. It's this Australian show, and the music is composed mostly by a man named Joff Bush, who also performs most of the music, along with his team of musicians. The soundtrack of this show is so good that it's even been released as an album, and then it won Best Children's Album at the 2021 ARIA Music Awards, and Best Soundtrack Album at the APRA Screen Music Awards in 2021. Long story short, this is a fantastic show with a fantastic soundtrack. But the question that we're going to answer today is why? What makes this show's soundtrack so good? Well, today we're going to go through 6 things. One thing that makes this show's soundtrack so great is that every episode has its own individual score. Are there recurring motifs and themes? Yes. But every episode sounds unique. There is a concentrated effort put into the soundtrack for every episode and makes every episode special. Every episode is like a concert. Every episode is a new experience. My personal favorite episode soundtracks are The Creek and Camping. Another great thing about the soundtrack of Bluey is that the composer of the show is involved in the episodes as they're being scripted. This gives a whole level of insight into the purpose of the music and into the dynamics, into the shifts in tone as the show progresses, that most shows are too lazy to really set out to do. By having the composer involved in the writing room, this allows us to understand the story in a whole different language, because really that's what music is. It's a language that we understand subtly, but maybe not overtly. It's like a whole new sense. And by having the composer involved, he's communicating to us through this sense. Building off of that, by having the composer involved in the episode as it's being scripted, this allows for a mix of upbeat and soft compositions. What do I mean by that? Well, let's consider The Creek, right? An episode that I mentioned earlier. The intro to The Creek sounds like this. But then as the episode goes on, the track that backs the episode changes to this. And then it changes again to this. And what birds they hum. This sort of attention to detail is the kind of thing that's only possible by having the composer in the room. It's this level of attention to detail that makes us love Bluey's soundtracks even more. Another thing that makes Bluey great is its classical rearrangements. So many episodes do rearrangements of classic themes. Here are a couple of examples. Some people might think this is laziness, but I would say that having something recognizable that we as adults can latch onto is valuable. And this is a way of introducing children who watch the show to all these iconic and memorable classic compositions. And that's not to say that these are just bit for bit verbatim rearrangements of the classical compositions. No. They're recontextualized with the episodes in the show. They go along with what's happening in the plot. And they have the same instrumentation as the other Bluey episodes. Speaking of which, the next thing that makes Bluey's soundtrack so good is those identifiable instruments. Bluey is a show where you can hear the instruments being played in every song in the show. It's a show where when you hear the soundtrack, even out of context, you know what show you're hearing. It has an iconic palette of instruments, and the timbre of the show is distinct, meaning the feel of the music of the show is specific to Bluey. And by occupying this niche that Bluey occupies, it sounds unlike any other kids show. Now, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but for my last thing that I think makes the Bluey soundtrack so great, I need to talk again about Motifs and Repetition. The Bluey theme is iconic, and it is everywhere. It's a motif that's simple, and yet it's infectious. It just sticks around in your head. And Bluey knows this. That's why they repeat it all the time. Every episode starts with the theme song, followed by the theme song again. You can even hear the characters humming it sometimes. So with all that being said, those were 6 reasons why Bluey's soundtrack is amazing. The composer and musicians behind the show really outdid themselves. And that just goes to show that everyone involved with Bluey is going above and beyond. And this is not just a kid show. If you haven't seen it for yourself, you should check it out. And if you haven't heard the soundtrack, you should listen to it. It's really good. Alright everyone, that's all for today. See you soon. Bye.